Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time we're getting into something super fascinating, the idea of ritual purity in Islam.
Always a relevant topic, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially focusing on wudu, ablutions.
hmm
Yeah, we've been following along with the Echoes of Ihsan podcast.
Great show, by the way.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And they've been going deep into Sahih Bukhari, book 4, which is all about ablutions.
A classic text. So much to unpack there.
Seriously. Tons of hadiths in there. So many incredible insights about wudu, but I gotta admit, it can feel a little overwhelming. That's why I'm thrilled to have you here.
Happy to help break it down.
We're gonna really dig into those key takeaways about wudu, what's crucial, what might surprise us, and maybe even stuff that'll change how we think about washing up, you know?
I think it can go even deeper than that. Maybe even shift how we approach the whole idea of purity itself.
Ooh, okay, I like that, going beyond the surface. So let's just start with the basics. What exactly is wudu, and why is it such a big deal in Islam? I know one of the first hadiths you had marked was Hadith 137 from Sahih Bukhari.
Yeah, that one's really powerful.
It's where the Prophet Muhammad makes it super clear. He says, basically, if you've broken that natural state of purity, your prayer won't be accepted until you perform wudu.
It emphasizes just how important ritual purity is. Like, it's fundamental in Islam.
Right. Okay, so help me out here. What's the Arabic word for that state of impurity? I remember hearing it.
Hadith.
Hadath, right.
Right.
What does that really mean?
You can think of it kind of like a spiritual static, something that blocks our connection with the divine.
Ah,
Wudu is all about removing that obstacle.
so it's not just about physical cleanliness, right?
Yeah.
It's prepping ourselves spiritually for prayer.
Exactly. Wudu creates a bridge between our physical and spiritual selves, so we can approach prayer in a state of purity, ready to receive.
It's like setting the stage for something deeper.
Precisely. And speaking of deeper, have you come across Hadith 138? That one paints such a vivid picture.
Oh yeah, the one about the Prophet's followers being called Al-Ghurul Muhajjalun
Mm.
on the day of resurrection.
That's the one. Those with bright faces and limbs, like radiating light.
It's just such a beautiful image, and it doesn't stop at it just looks, right?
Oh, no, definitely not.
It actually encourages Muslims to increase this radiance through wudu. It's like there's a link between inner purity and outer radiance.
Absolutely. It's as if the purity we work on inside, it shines out, manifests as this luminous glow. It really asks us to think about how connected our inner and outer states are, how spiritual practice can change our whole presence.
You know, it makes me think, could cultivating that inner purity change how we interact with the world and how people see us?
It's an interesting thought. There's a certain magnetism that comes with true inner peace. It's like a light that draws others in.
Love that. It's spiritual magnetism. Yeah. So it seems like wudu is this amazing blend of the physical and the spiritual. It's like a doorway to connect with the divine more deeply.
And like any doorway, it has its own set of guidelines, specific practices. I know you've highlighted several hadiths that really get into the details.
Totally. There are so many hadiths that give really specific rulings on doing wudu the right way. Like we're talking details about handling doubts during prayer, how sleep plays a role, even which hand to use for certain things.
And, it might seem overwhelming at first, but it's fascinating how much emphasis there is on practicality and ease within these rulings.
Okay, yeah, give me an example. I'm all for making things easier.
All right, well, take Hadith 139. It talks about those times when doubts can pop into your head during prayer.
Oh, I know those moments.
The Prophet Muhammad says you should only break your prayer if you're certain you've broken your wudu. It's about staying present in your prayer and not letting unnecessary doubts mess with that connection.
So don't interrupt the flow unless you're absolutely sure. I like that.
Well, what about the hadiths that talk about sleep? Like, do I have to perform wudu every time I wake up?
Interestingly, no.
Oh, good to know.
Hadith 140 actually gives a great example from the Prophet's own life. It shows that you don't need to repeat wudu after sleeping, even if you are soaring.
Okay, so no extra steps when we're trying to get some rest. Practicality wins again. But I know there are some things we're definitely not supposed to do, right?
Right. There are some clear prohibitions. For instance, Hadith 155 forbids breathing into a drinking vessel. It also prohibits using the right hand to clean yourself after using the toilet.
I see. Hygiene and respect all rolled into one. And what about Hadith 163? It talks about washing your hands before wudu after you wake up.
Exactly. It emphasizes the importance of starting fresh. You might not remember where your hands have been while you were sleeping, so cleanse them before starting wudu. It's such a beautiful reminder of the intentionality behind the practice. It's like every detail has been carefully considered to make these rituals both meaningful and well-doable.
Yeah.
It's not about rigid rules, it's about setting up a framework for spiritual growth that actually fits into our lives.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance, striving for excellence, but also acknowledging the realities of being human. It's a journey, and Wudu is like a practical and beautiful map to guide us.
I like that, a map. But as I was reading through these hadiths, I did come across some things that seemed, well, kind of contradictory.
Oh, like what?
Well, take the number of times you wash each part of your body during wudu. There are a couple of different hadiths that address that.
Ah, yes. Hadith 159 and 160.
One suggests washing once, the other says twice. It seems a bit confusing, doesn't it?
It does seem that way at first glance, yes. But this difference actually comes from the fact that these hadiths were passed down through different narrators who observed slightly different variations in how the Prophet did it.
So how are we supposed to know which way is right? It can feel a little overwhelming.
That's where understanding the spirit of the law comes in. While striving for the best practice is always encouraged, there's room for flexibility. Islamic jurisprudence recognizes that. The focus is on the intention, the sincerity behind the action.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about approaching the ritual with a sincere heart, truly wanting that purification.
Exactly. It's about grasping the essence of wudu and applying it in a way that feels meaningful and authentic to you.
I appreciate that perspective. It definitely feels less intimidating and more about making sure our actions match up with our intentions. Going through all these hadiths, I've started to get the feeling that wudu is, well, it's about a lot more than just the act of washing. It feels almost symbolic.
You're picking up on something very profound. Wudu has a depth that goes beyond the physical. It's like a tiny reflection of the whole spiritual journey.
What do you mean by that?
Think about it. Wudu involves cleaning specific parts of our body, the parts we use to interact with the world. It's like symbolically purifying our actions, our words, our very senses, getting them ready to be used for good in service to the divine.
Wow, it's like we're not just washing our hands and face, we're washing away the stuff we pick up from our worldly interactions, renewing ourselves for that deeper connection.
Precisely. It's a ritual of purification on multiple levels. When you start to see it that way, wudu takes on a whole new dimension.
Now I'm really starting to see why you said it's like a mini version of the spiritual journey. It's that constant striving for purity, for renewal, and for that deeper connection.
And that striving for purity, it goes beyond just the ritual itself. You'll find so many hadiths highlighting how important it is to maintain purity in other parts of life, and how we treat others, in our thoughts, even in our surroundings.
That makes a lot of sense. Purity isn't just a one-time thing, it's an ongoing process, a way of life.
Absolutely. It's about developing a state of awareness, of intentionality that flows into every aspect of who we are. And wudu, with its symbolism and practical guidelines, gives us a powerful framework to start that journey of purification.
It really is fascinating, isn't it? To see how such a simple act like washing can have so much spiritual depth.
And speaking of depth, were there any other hadiths from Sahih Bukhari that stood out to you as you were exploring this idea of purity?
One that really struck me was Hadith 143, the one about seeking protection from Satan during intimate moments and for future children.
Ah, yes.
Like wudu is about protecting our most sacred spaces, physically and spiritually.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It really highlights that protective aspect of wudu, creating a shield against negativity and inviting blessings into those intimate parts of life.
It makes me think about how even when we're feeling really emotional or vulnerable, we can turn to wudu for grounding, for spiritual protection.
And it's not just about protection from outside forces either. There's also Hadith 144. It talks about seeking refuge in Allah when answering the call of nature, at a time when we might feel exposed, even ashamed.
It's like a reminder that even in those, well, kind of private moments, we can still connect with the divine, find comfort in his protection. It's bringing spirituality into every single aspect of our lives.
Exactly. And that idea of extending purity beyond the ritual, it pops up in a lot of other hadiths too. Remember those ones about the Bedouin man who accidentally urinated in the mosque?
Yeah. Hadiths 218 and 219. Honestly, I was a little surprised by the Prophet's reaction. I thought he'd be angry.
It's a really powerful example of his compassion and his wisdom. He doesn't scold the man. He just tells his companions to clean the area with water.
Yeah, he even reminds them, you have been sent to make things easy and not to make them difficult.
What a beautiful lesson in approaching matters of purity. It's not about harshness or judging, but about understanding, guiding, and creating a welcoming space for everyone to worship.
It really does change your perspective, doesn't it? It's not about being fanatical about cleanliness. It's about approaching it with compassion and understanding,
Right.
knowing that everyone makes mistakes and we should focus on supporting each other and learning, not punishing.
Precisely. And that emphasis on practicality, it shows up in other areas too. You mentioned those hadiths about when food might have touched something impure, like
Mhm.
hadiths 236 and 237.
Oh, right, the one about the mouse falling into the ghee.
Exactly. It's fascinating how the Prophet Muhammad gives very specific instructions for those situations. Like, you remove the contaminated part, but the rest is still okay to eat.
Such a practical approach. You don't have to throw everything away. It minimizes waste.
Absolutely. It shows that balance between keeping things pure, but also not making things unnecessarily difficult or wasteful. It's about using wisdom and making good judgments in our daily lives.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. It's amazing how these hadiths from Sahih Bukhari give us such a nuanced and practical understanding of ritual purity.
And it's not just about the specific rules or the practices, it's about the bigger principles behind them. Principles that we can apply to so many different parts of our lives.
I agree. It's like wudu is a blueprint for cultivating purity, not just in our actions, but in our thoughts, our words, even our intentions.
You know, thinking about purity extending beyond the physical like that,
Hmm.
it reminds me of another hadith that really struck me.
Which one?
It's Hadith 238. It describes how, on the day of judgment, the wounds of those who died fighting for a righteous cause will appear as they were when they were inflicted. But instead of blood, they'll give off a fragrance of musk.
Wow, that's that's powerful. Even in battle, there's this element of purity and beauty that goes beyond the physical.
Exactly. It suggests that those who fight for what's right, even when facing hardship and suffering, will be rewarded with a state of pureness in the afterlife. Their sacrifices will be transformed into something beautiful and fragrant.
It's a beautiful reminder that the path to purity might not always be easy, but the rewards are. Well, they're immeasurable. And this brings us back to Baraka, right? Something we talked about earlier.
Yes, Baraka, that divine grace, that overflowing abundance that fills our lives when we're in tune with the divine. It's like a spiritual magnet that attracts goodness and blessings.
And you were saying it's connected to purity.
Absolutely. Purity, both physical and spiritual, acts like a channel for Baraka. It's through things like wudu, through striving for a clean heart and actions, that we open ourselves up to that flow of divine grace.
So by cultivating purity in all areas of our lives, we become more receptive to Baraka, letting it flow in and bless us with its abundance.
Yes. And it's not just about receiving Baraka, it's about becoming a source of it ourselves.
Wait, what do you mean? Can we really become a source of Baraka for others?
Think about those hadiths you mentioned earlier, where people sought blessings from the prophet's leftover water. It's like his purity, his closeness to the divine, created this ripple effect that reached those around him.
So by working on our own purity, we can actually become conduits of Baraka for others.
Exactly. By striving for cleanliness in our hearts and actions, by spreading kindness and compassion, we can become a source of blessing and light for the world, inspiring others to do the same.
That's a beautiful thought. It's like we're all connected, and our individual efforts towards purity can contribute to something much bigger, a more blessed and harmonious world.
And it doesn't have to be grand gestures either. It's those small, everyday acts of kindness, compassion, and choosing purity in our thoughts and words and actions.
I love that. So it's not just about washing our hands and feet, it's about washing our hearts and minds too.
And in doing so, we can transform not just ourselves, but the world around us.
You know, listening to you talk about Baraka and its connection to purity, it makes me realize how easy it is to get lost in the busyness of life and forget about those simple acts of purification. Like we get so focused on what's outside, we neglect what's inside.
It's true. We live in a world that's constantly pushing for speed and efficiency. It's easy to forget about mindfulness and intention.
But these hadiths are such a powerful reminder that even in our busy lives, we can still find those moments to pause, to reconnect with ourselves, and cultivate that state of purity that lets Baraka flow into our lives.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's the smallest, seemingly insignificant moments that have the biggest impact.
Like really taking a moment to appreciate the feeling of water washing over our hands, or pausing to say a silent prayer of thanks before a meal.
Exactly. Or even just taking a few deep breaths before a tough conversation, so we can approach it with calmness and clarity.
These are all ways we can bring the principles of Wudu into our everyday lives, right? Creating those little moments of purification and intention throughout the day.
And in doing so, we can transform those everyday routines into something more, into acts of worship, filling our lives with purpose and meaning. It's about making conscious choices to align our actions with our values, even in the smallest things.
And by doing that, we cultivate inner peace and harmony that spreads to those around us.
It's a beautiful reminder that even in the middle of all the chaos in the world, we can create our own spaces of purity and light.
And those little spaces of light can really make a difference. It's amazing to think about, isn't it? How each of us can be a source of baraka, creating this ripple effect of goodness and blessings that touches the lives of others.
It really is. It reminds us that even the smallest acts of purity and kindness can have a huge impact on the world.
It makes you realize we really can make a difference, right? This whole deep dive into Wudu, going through all these hadiths from Sahih Bukhari, it's been like a spiritual reset, you know?
Yeah, definitely. We've covered so much ground, the importance of ritual purity, what it means practically, and that deep spiritual meaning behind it all.
And the best part is, you don't need to make huge changes, right? It's those little intentional acts of purification we can fit into our daily lives.
Exactly. And those small acts, they can make a big difference. Think about it. Choosing kind words when you're frustrated, taking a moment to just appreciate the beauty around you. These things have a ripple effect. They impact us and everyone around us.
It's like those ripples, those choices we make to align ourselves with purity, they create the space for baraka to flow in our own lives and in the lives of others.
It really is a beautiful thought that by cultivating that inner purity, we can become these conduits of blessings, radiating light and goodness out into the world.
Absolutely. And it's empowering to think that we can make a difference just by living with intention, being aware and committed to purity. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I have to ask, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from all this? What's that nugget of wisdom that will stay with them?
After going through all these hadiths, what really sticks with me is that purity isn't a finish line. It's a journey. It's that ongoing process of striving, refining, renewing that commitment to living in alignment with the divine. And the beautiful thing is, it's a journey anyone can take. We don't have to be scholars or saints to embrace these principles and let them change our lives.
I love that. Purity is a journey, not a destination. It takes the pressure off. No need to be perfect. It's about welcoming that process of growth and refinement. So as we leave our listeners with this final thought, I want to encourage you all to approach life as this journey of purification.
Yes, embrace those moments of washing, both literally and figuratively. Think of them as opportunities to cleanse not just your body, but your heart and intentions too. Let the principles of Wudu be your guide, and let your own unique light shine bright.
Because the world needs your light. And it all starts with that first step, that conscious choice to embrace this journey of purity. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep shining your light.